No, not only black.
No, it's
Screen.
okay.
No, it is okay.
Is it
Okay,
okay
now it is
now?
okay. Okay
It's
now.
okay. Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, shall we start now? Yes. Okay. So after this technical issue, I would like to welcome all participants, and you feel free to ask me what you related to this topic today. I planned to conduct this training 2 days, and this is generally agenda, but not strictly. We could change some issues during 2 days. It depends on you, of course, and your interests. So I planned for the first day to talk about generally about risks, term definitions, all principles, methodology, differences between methodology, standards, etc. Risk identification, actually all aspects and all steps related to risk management. So about coffee break, you could also to suggest me if you are tired, when would you like to coffee break? But I planned it about 10:30, and I think it is enough about 15 minutes or 20 minutes. It depends of you. And the next part of session, actually about this training, is also implementation, risk-based thinking, risk-registered risk analysis, case study, of course, context of the organization, etc. So we will have time, I think, to pass all these topics today. Also, by the end of the day, I plan some homework, for example, related to this, what I talked today. And for tomorrow, we will be more detailed related to your laboratories related to 70 or 25, 70 or 20 standards, okay, series 70,000 norms. So let's go on the first slide. So what is risk management? I chose this slide, this example. Actually, this is a hiker. You just imagine you are a hiker and you have to climb to the top on the mountain. So you have equipment, but it is not so secure 100%, but you still need to go and you still need to survive and you need to pass this peak. So related to your market, related to your organizations, considering that the market does not offer you a suitable rope that is 100% secured in all conditions, you still need to take an action. So every action you will be like a risk management process here. So what is the problem we find? What is related to knowing actually acting is many organizations, many companies actually know what are their risks, what is the source of the risks. But why? What is the question now is why do still organizations, your laboratories, your companies, etc., fail in risk management? So I find some of the reason, the main reason why some the reasons for risk management is failure. On first place is insufficient capital. Actually, 58% of small business company loan applicant ask for $100,000 or less amount. Then where you can hear me? Yeah. Okay. The next one is failure in communicating the risks to the top management. So you could share your experience also with me related to this reason. So failure in horizontal vertical communication. Actually, everything I found depends, not everything, but most of them depends of culture in your organization, culture in your company, culture in your laboratory, and it depends of your top management manager. So manager and top management should spend most of their time to communicating these problems and have to be completely involved in this topic. What is the first question when you implement ISO standards? The first question is your strategy. Why I need this? Why my company, why this laboratory organization need this standard? What I have, what I need to achieve? What is my goal? So that is the first question actually for every company, every organization. So what is the next problem related to the risk management failure is risk ignorance. Sometimes it is the lack of the information. Ignorance is also could be based on some social factors, cultural organization, I always mention, and sometimes ignorance is a result of impulse. Then next failure is to mitigate risk. On which way you mitigate risk? It is very important which technique you use. So small and medium enterprises could increase revenue by 26% in 3 years and 42% in 5 years, I find it. So the next reason is no concrete plan. So, you know, every standard, it's asked, actually demand to plan. So you do not have concrete plan. Only 17% of organizations have a business model that investor can trust and rely on. So do you have something to add or to be involved in this? So what is the solution for the future? How can we solve and avoid all these problems? So ISO will explain, and also ISO 31000, ISO 314, and ISO 31. I strongly recommend ISO 31010. And I would like to mention also, this is not a standard for certification. You must be clear related to that. It is only guide, just to give you direction how to implement your risk management actually in your organization. So on this slide, this is brief differences between standards and methodology, because I find people are not so clear sometimes between these two issues. What is standard? Standard is a reference document covering a wide industrial interests. And standard is based on voluntary process. I would like to mention now legislation is on the first place, then standard. So approved by recognized organization. So you have specified requirements or normative or guidelines, informative for certain activities. And what are the main questions related to this standard is respond primarily to the why and what question. So what is methodology? It is a rigorous and formalized structure, uses resources effectively to achieve desired result, and also depend on the tools such as questionnaires or special softwares for that. And what is the main question is how to do. So risk management, ISO 31000 provides guidelines on managing risks faced by organizations, by your laboratories, institutes, etc., in any industry or sector. It is applicable to any type of risk and regard of its nature and consequences. So I mentioned before, organization cannot obtain certification against this standard. Actually, this is a guide. So what is 31004? It is actually technical report. ISO technical report provides guidelines for the implementation of ISO 31000. And this technical report is designed to assist organization to achieve effectiveness of their risk management effort by aligning to them. Also, it can be used by any public or private organization, enterprise group, or individual too. So I also mentioned 31010. I just recommend strongly this. If we will have time for tomorrow, maybe we'll discuss and talk about more about this document. Actually, in this document, you have detailed explain every methodology, everything about your content text communication, consultancy, and many other aspects you need. So you could find in this document these steps. First of all, you have to establish the context of your organization, context of your laboratory. This is very familiar from other quality management standards because it is very similar with other standards. So that is very easier way to integrate all of these standards. Then we have risk assessment. What is risk assessment? We have 3 main steps. First, risk identification. Very important is the risk identification. Identify risk on right way. Also, in this document, you will find terms communication and consultation. We will talk about it later, detailed. And after identification, you have risk analysis also, and after that, risk evaluation. And the last step is risk treatment. After that, you have monitoring and review. So value of this guides is risk-oriented corporate management system is very useful because especially for added value for your companies, added value for your organization. So this guidance offer to your organization managing, reporting, policies, value, culture, and planning, and first of all, governance, correctly governance in your organization. This guide helps organization in establishing a risk management strategy to detect and correctly mitigate risk in all effective manner, so increasing the chance of achieving their objectives. So you could see on this cycle what is important. First step, identifying hazards, something we call threat, and risk factors. Also, we can see inside leadership commitment. It is the most important for all these topic. Leadership commitment is on the first place. That is the difference before previous version. Then we have supportive, capable management and supervision. The focus is also in all these new standards, quality management standards, is on leadership commitment, actually the way of leadership. Not so much authoritative leadership, as I could say, more democratic, more common vision and motivation with other staff, with all employees, because it is very important to have motivate employee in your organization. So after identifying risk, you have 2 steps. You have assess risk, you have all known risk, recognize risk, and after that we have control. Step 3 is control risk. That is also including all the way communication and consulting. Step 4 is monitor and review effectiveness of control. So on this slide is a very useful slide. For value creation and protection your organization, what is important? Now it is detailed, explained. Human and cultural factor. So I always mention it is very important how your culture in your company, in your organization. Mostly depends on top management. So both human behavior and culture influence heavily the risk management. So these 2 characteristics are taken into account in all aspects of this risk management. Then we need best available information, correctly information. So dynamic is very important. We saw that during this pandemic, this unpredictable situation, considering that both internal and external change happen. So it is very important related to your context and external and internal issues related to your organization, related to your laboratory. Risk management is able to detect and respond to those changes properly and on time. Dynamic is very important in this case. So what else is very important is inclusive, to be inclusive. The risk management includes the necessary stakeholders and take into account their knowledge, views, and perceptions. The next is customized. The risk management is linked to the organization objectives. Of course, we have your objectives in your laboratory, short-term and measurable objectives also, and strategies. And it's tailored to fit the organization's context. That means customized. The next, structure and comprehensive. The risk management is established upon a structured and comprehensive approach, very, very important in this case. Also integrated, the organization integrate risk management in all of its activities. It is very important. And after that, continual improvement. We heard many times this terms. Continual improvement is also related to risk management. The organization's risk management is continually improved. So very clear, this chart is what is first. Identify what is the main question. What might go wrong? That is also a very important question for risk identification. The next step is assessment and analysis. Assessment of probability or likelihood and impact of that. So in Bosnian language, probability and likelihood is a single word. So mitigation, also fallback planning. What can we do about it? What might we have to do? And then ongoing risk management, how do we stay on top of it? This is a very common example in daily life is ISO 1000 definition of risk. You have a possible event. We used John. John had to go to some meeting. What is objective? Objective to be on time in the office. What could happen? What possible event? What is incident situation? What is threat? If that is occurs, how they have impact on objectives. So you can see that on very similar example in daily life, how that we used risk, effect of uncertainty on objectives. I like this definition. It is very simple. We have many documentation related to this topic, many definitions about it, but it is for me clear. Risk is effect of uncertainty on your objectives. That is the easiest way how to define risk on your objectives. What is the question now? The end of any human activity is uncertain. Is it true? So, if someone is on the bus time, they will arrive on time. For what is uncertainty in this case? If someone, first, at the time of the bus ride, it is enabling condition. The next, if the bus does not break down, if there is no traffic jam, arrive on time. So you must decide control level. Control level is only one. First can be control in this case, but second and third beyond our control. So what is important? Uncertainty and exposure. It is very important issues. We are faced with uncertainty because we don't know the future, and we don't know actually, we do not have enough information about it. So what's the question now for you? Is the risk always personal? Do something want to answer or comment on this question? Is the risk always personal? Every risk, even if it happens in an organization, is ultimately personal. It applies to individual, owners, managers, customers, employees, etc. So what on this slide we can, for better understanding this guide, what could be risk sources here? You can see that, and you can see that also risk is defined as effect of uncertainty on objective. So risk sources could be many risk sources and cause event. Some event could have negative consequences. We call that threats, and some have positive consequences. We call that opportunities. Sometimes we forgot on opportunities, but we must include that in all risk management system, because no threat opportunity is also a big risk sometimes. So after that, we have impact of this event on business objectives. That depends That means your objectives, your goals in your organization, laboratory. We have short-term, long-term objectives also. Next, I also find this example, risk exposure is very important, and sometimes we forgot about it. The consequence of the occurrence of risky event also depends on degree of sensitivity, possible influence of risky event on the achievement, the goal, and possible loss. So in this case, what is uncertainty and what is exposure? You can see on this slide, will the parachute open? If the parachute does not open, it will have consequences. So the man on this picture takes risk because he is exposed to uncertainty. So risk event and exposure. What is important here? Both components, uncertainty and exposure, are not present. If are not present, then there is no risk. So you need to have uncertainty and exposure to have risk, to define that risk. So the risk management, what is it? So this is from a guide. The identification, assessment, and prioritization of risk are defined in this guide as the effect of uncertainty of objectives, followed by coordinated economical application of resources to minimize, monitor, and control the probability and or impact of unfortunate events, or to maximize the realization of offered opportunities here. So we have here 5 steps in the ISO 7025 laboratory risk management process. First step is identifying risks and opportunities tool. Step 2 is evaluate the risk. Step 3 is rank the risks and opportunities tool. And step 4, determine action to be taken. And now finally, step 5, implement, monitor, and follow up. That is the main 5 steps related to risk management in ISO 7025 for laboratory risk management process. So I will repeat this. Very important is communication, properly communication in your organization related to the risk assessment, especially during risk identification. I mentioned previous risk identification sometimes is personal. So I strongly recommend to have team for risk assessment, especially during risk identification. Also, I find most of problems in some organization is who will define the risk, who will do it, who will identify risk. Actually, it is owner of processes. They know best what is their risk for their job. So let's go. Risk assessment. Now we have risk analysis, risk evaluation, and after that risk treatment, after monitoring and review. Very important step is monitoring of that risk, because you do not finish your job when you just do risk assessment. After that is very important monitoring and effect of undertake steps, actions actually. So do you have some question? So on this slide, okay.
Yeah, just the risk analysis. Do we have to perform it for each process in our quality management system, or just general assessment for all the system?
Okay, it depends of you, what you recognize as a risk for your organization. But I strongly recommend not go so wide, not so much complicate your risk analysis. You know, you just consider all processes, of course, but you have to decide which risk you will be treated. But it is recommended to recognize risk. Maybe you do not undertake some action. Maybe you just realize the risk is existing there. But I also recommend just documented it also too.
Okay.
Okay. So on the next slide, we have how risk tracking actually on this, in this case, identifying risk. First, risk identification. What does it mean? It is possible risk events, and their relationship also must be defined. After that, we have assess probability or likelihood and consequences on some achieved some goals. Risk impact. Now we have an assessment. Probabilities and consequences of risk events are assessed. Then consequences may include what? Cost, schedule, technical performance impacts, capability of functionality impacts, etc. So you have a third step is make a prioritization and analysis of that risk. Decision analytic rules apply to rank order identifying risk events from most to least critical. So now you have correctly risk mitigation. So you could risk event assessed as medium or high, critically might go into risk mitigation, planning and implementation. So you have now option to low critical risk might be tracked and monitored on a watch list. So as I mentioned as I answer on your question, so if you have low critical risk, you do not undertake because it must be, it could be much more cost to do something related to that risk, or maybe sometimes it's easier to accept. It could happen, okay. So you just have to consider it correctly. And then you have risk mitigation, planning, implementation, and process monitoring. So why process monitoring? Because after that, after all, you have reassess existing risk events and identify new risk events. Because of that, I mentioned on previous slide, that is not finished job. When you do all this step, you have 4-step reassess existing risk events and identify new risks if you have it, of course, and the fact of undertake steps to treat your previous mentioned identifying risks.
I have a question here, please.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. If the step number 4, it is mitigation, it did not make any benefit, can consider another step 5, like compensation plan to compensate about this risk.
Mm-hmm. If I hear well, you asked me about correctly mitigation that risk, and no benefit. What do you mean? No benefit to you? That is the reason why you monitor.
I mean, if the risk is happened, I took all mitigation measure planning. It did not give any benefit, and the risk was happened.
Mm-hmm.
What we can do? Can make any compensation plan to compensate about this risk?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, if you do not any benefit related to this risk mitigation, something get wrong during your steps, you know, because you have to have benefit after risk analysis, assessment, etc. If in this case you do not have benefit after all of these steps, you have to change something during your treatment of that risk. You have to change. Okay, maybe something get wrong during identification, maybe not. Maybe during prioritization of your risks. Maybe you put priority on first step something what is not so much priority for your organization, for your laboratory. So you have to go, that is the monitoring of 4-step is very important to measure effect. After all your preventive corrective action during all standards, you have to measure effectiveness on your processes. You know, so that is a 4-step is very important. You maybe your goals is not correctly implement or establish actually. Maybe you it is also happen sometimes. You have to change your goals. Maybe you are too ambitious. Your appetite to undertake more risks than you could, than your capacity of your laboratory could undertake. So it is very important mitigate and planning correctly, you know, and that is a 4-step reassess. After that, if it is not a benefit for your organization, reassess it. Maybe you should avoid complicated some processes. Maybe you should to take just a couple of risks. It depends actual nature of your activities.
Okay, thank you, man.
Can I add a point? Just for risk mitigation and during response to risk, we cannot make prioritization or develop our maybe response or mitigation plan. But from the beginning, we can have like a default scenario and we can deal with it. This is one. Another one, maybe we can have another like contingency plan for dealing with something behind the design analysis of our risk. So it should be like that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. What is very important during all your series 17,000 standards is documented information. The terminology, documented information, it was the previous records, procedures, etc. What you have to, what must you have to document it. You do not need so much procedures. If you would, if you like in your organization to have some procedure, it is not non-conformity. But for example, risk register, risk plan is recommended. Also, if you have risk procedure, it is also, you can use it, of course. But what is obligatory, what is mandatory is to have a risk register to document it, how you treat your risk. It is not so necessary to have many procedures, it is not necessary in this standard. In every standard, you know.
Yes.
Do you understand? Yeah. Okay.
Maybe because I'm working for Federal Authority for Nuclear Regulation and I dealing with the emergency preparedness and response. So we have to be committed to follow a specific procedures, working instructions. So if something abnormal, so we have to do a certain actions. And actually, we have to have a conservative approach when we are planning our risks and when we are dealing with it. So this is the point. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that is different approach completely now. You need, because your regulation and law, etc., to be in line with international standards related to this nuclear industry. You have a nuclear laboratory. It is very important to have a different approach than this. So also you have sometimes in avio industry, etc., plane industry, also you have specified what have to undertake related to risk mitigation, planning and implementation and process during monitoring. So, okay, thank you. So who is risk owner? Could you somebody tell me, what do you think, who is risk owner? I put this question here because I found that could be a problem in your organizations because nobody knows who is the risk owner. Especially, I found 3 definitions of risk owner. It is important to know. Yeah, okay.
You would like us?
Okay, thank you.
You would like us to answer, or you will?
Yeah, I would like to hear your experience during risk owner, during treatment risk, because sometimes in some organization you have problem because staff don't want to identify risk because they told that is not my job. I don't know what is risk, you know. They don't want responsibility related to that. So this is very important to know who is the risk owner. You have to identify if you have that problems, but sometimes could happen, especially during auditing the many systems. Nobody don't want to identify risk. You tell me what is my risk. No, I cannot tell you your risk. You could be quality manager, head of laboratory, etc., but you could not take all responsibility for all risks. It is very important.
Yeah. Hi, okay. I have a question.
Yeah.
What's the difference between risk and non-conformance?
Okay. Risk is actually uncertainty on your goals. You have to to implement some goals, objectives in your laboratory. Uncertainty to achieve these goals is risk. Okay. Something could happen and not achieve your goals. That is a risk. Event could be positive, negative. We go back on this topic, and I mentioned. Okay, and a non-conformity. What is non-conformity? During all implementation, your ISO standards. 70,000 all quality management standards. You have your processes. You have your standards, and what is non-conformity? If you are not in line with your standard, you are not in line with your own procedure. What is? I found many problems in some company. If they put their many procedures, they like procedures, okay. Good practice, okay. You have many procedures, instructions, okay, but you are not in line with your own procedures, for example. That is also non-conformity. Of course, you have to be in line with your implemented standards, step by step. You have your standard and listing like regulations, special and legislation also is standard, and you have to define all steps in standard, point by point, and you have to in line with these points of the standard, all item in standard. Do you understand why I want to approach to you?
So I have a question.
Okay, yeah, okay.
If I have some event happens like a non-conformance that
Okay,
appears every time in the or every some often the event is occurring. So I raise a non-conformance about this event. Is having sequence of non-conformance will lead to a risk, or it is opposite? Is it the risk will lead to non-conformance? So because for me, I see when I identify my risk, I see what or which non-conformance is reoccurring during the year. So then I say, okay, this is a risk because something is happening more than one time in a year. So that means I should pay attention. It may get us to a big risk or having like such and such and such consequences. So is this right approach for me, or I should rethink?
A very interesting question. Well, if you define graduate your non-conformity as small, medium, high, it depends of you. Especially sometimes small and high non-conformity, big non-conformity and small. If you find you have some small non-conformity, but it is repeated every year, if I understood you well, every time, it could be now in a second definition graduate, it could be big non-conformity. You do not do anything to solve your non-conformity because it is the same non-conformity all the time. It is very important which kind of non-conformity is it? Is it minor or high, big non-conformity? If you do not affect on your essential activities in your organizational laboratory, it is actually small, minor non-conformity. But if you have repeated that non-conformity all the time, something you should undertake. Related to that, your non-conformity, you have to identify your risk to your essential activities on your organization and your laboratory. If they affect on some issues related to your main activities, essential activities, on your goals especially, that could be defined as a risk, and you have to document it. Okay?
Thank you.
So, thank you. So, who is the risk owner? Very interesting question. When you have problem in your laboratories, if some of staff persons do not want to identify their risk and I don't know my risk, what is the main question actually? You should ask them, do you know your job? If you know your job, if you know what to do in your activities, you know your risks better than other, But also you should use brainstorming and teamwork. I recommend also teamwork, because what is risk for me, maybe it is not for you, maybe it is opportunity for you. Okay. So who is risk owner? There was many discussion. If I identify my risk, am I a risk owner? Not all the time. It depends some of top management, of other external issues also, and depends actually of context on your organization, and influences also from outside, inside, etc. So who is risk owner? ISO Guide 73. This is person or entity with the accountability and authority to manage the risk. That is the one definition. So what is the suitable definition for your laboratories? Maybe you could tell your experience. For the next, risk owner, the person responsible for monitoring the risk and for selecting and implementing an appropriate risk and response strategy. Okay, you could have some person to monitor the risk, but it is not so authorized to selecting and just to recommend some strategy how to solve that, what actions you could undertake related to that risk. So it is a little bit confused, this definition for me. So risk owner, the person or entity responsible for recognizing and monitoring the status of specific risk. Okay, this is important because when you start to implement all of these standard risk management, especially, people just don't want to include this, but it is very important, because after all, you realize what is risk management, you get correctly analysis, you correctly did correctly identification of risk. It is very important last step, monitor and measure effect. And that is now, after that, is important question, who is risk owner? Because it could be confusion that, because after monitoring and you find it is not effective, some action you undertake, people just confuse sometimes who is responsible for some activities. Okay.
I think it depends on the, sorry, yeah. I think it depends on the, it depends on the, the risk management in a small laboratory is different than risk management in a nuclear power plant or in a manufacturer. So in the small laboratory, one person or the head of the lab can be risk owner, but in the nuclear power plant, it should be a full organization or department or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. It is also depend of nature of your laboratory, nature of your activities, but everything is fine, everything is correctly. But when some accident happened, last time I used and I will repeat maybe today this example. The biggest disaster in American history related to not undertaking defining risk. Everything is fine, but when something happened, some incident, some loss of people, injuring, etc., you could get, you could see on my example how people just want to avoid their responsibility in some situation. So I think it is very important on this case to identify who is the owner of the risk, who is responsible for every risk. And of course, thank you for your comment. It is depend of nature of your activities of your laboratory. Okay, the first of all, you have many other specification, methodology, and the regulations on the first place in some cases, and on second place you have standards, you know. But this is not, this guide is actually guidance, just to help you how you will treat your risk. Or that is not prescribed, you must to do that. That is your choice, how you will treat, which kind of methodology you will use. Okay. If you have some normal, usually activities in your laboratory, not specified as nuclear or some other precise industry, it is a recommendation not too much complicate during identifying risk and treating, because it could be risk after that all. You made a new risk for your activities if you are not so clearly defined all activities correctly. And that could you see on last step, 5 step during reassess, monitoring and measure effect. Okay. So in this presentation, I would like to mention opportunity because we forgot opportunity. During risk management system, risk-based thinking, we have all sometimes risk-based thinking oriented, but we are always talk about risks, about negative influence, negative events, unpredictable events, etc., etc. But we forgot on opportunities. It is very important to recognize opportunity and what is the definition actually? Combination of circumstances expected to be favorable to your objectives. Opportunity is a positive situation which gain is likely and over which and has fair level of control. Opportunity to one part may pose a threat to another. Okay, something what is threat for me is opportunity for some other side. So it is very important to have a risk team when you identifying risks and opportunities to do, because some input for me is output for other processes, and it is different risks and maybe opportunity for some other part of process. Okay, what is opportunity? We now see what is opportunity, and taking or not taking opportunity is both source of risk. If you take some opportunity, it could be risk. If not take opportunity, is also could be risk, because you sometimes do not take some action because you say, it is big risk for me, I don't want to go to be involved in some that projects. But you forgot your opportunities and what your benefit, for example, for this project. So what is a threat? Also, what is very important when you define risks in your laboratories and organization is vulnerability of your system, to know what is your potential source for threat, for harm, danger, and other undesirable outcome. What is threat? Threat is a negative situation in which loss is likely and over which and has relatively little control, or you do not have control at all. A threat to one part may be poison opportunity to another part. What is event? Definition of event is occurrence or change or particular set of circumstances. An event can be one or more occurrences and can have several causes, of course. An event can sometimes be referred as incident or accident. What are the consequences for you, for your organization, for your activities and your processes? So definition is here outcome of an event affecting objectives. Objectives and your goals. An event can lead to a range of consequences, and the consequence can be certain or uncertain and can have positive or negative effect on objectives. Consequences can be expressed qualitatively or quantitatively. Initial consequences can escalate through knock-on effect. So I put in this presentation because it is a very wide matter, very wide range of this information. So what is residual risk? Most of us doesn't know what is residual risk, what is the definition of risk. What is it? Risk remaining after risk treatment. Residual risk can contain unidentifying risk. Also, residual risk can also be known as retained risk, and it is important to know how companies and your organization try to mitigate that risk. For example, you could avoid the risk. If what I said previous, you don't want to be involved in some project because it is too risky. You identifying that is too big risk for your organization. You avoid risk, then you have risk minimization or reduction. You will undertake many activities related to this. Then risk transfer is maybe most acceptable if you can do it. Risk transfer to somebody, third part, for example, insurance. And risk acceptance. okay, this is my risk, but I'm going to this project because my opportunities, etc., etc. So on this slide, I have I put differences. What is focus on risks and what is focus on quality? Focus on quality. We have some questions. What do we intend to do if you want to quality? Because definition of quality is different for customer, is different, for example, for producer. For producer, what is the quality? To be in line with all steps and procedures and methodology, specifications, etc., etc. But for me, for customer, for example, it is not. I need quality, some your services and products with some characteristics. Yeah. Okay. So focus on risks. What can go wrong? That is the main question. It is very simple question when you don't know how to identify your risk. The first question is, what can go wrong in my process? But always you have to, you need to know your goals, your objectives for your process. So when we have focus on quality, how we intend to perform it? If we have focus on risk, what opportunities open up for us? If we have focus on quality, how do we know we are doing it right? But we have focus on risks. What is the question? How can this affect performance? Focus on quality. How do we know this is the best way to do some activities and processes? And we have focus on risk. How will the risk be treated? Focus on quality. How do we know that what we are doing is right and what did we learn from that? And if we have focus on risks, how do we know our activities are effective? That is a very important question, because we could do many things related to risk management, identifying, treating, Excel sheets, etc., etc. But what is actually benefit for our organization? Because you all implementation ISO standard must have to give you added value for your company, for your owner, for your stakeholders, for your interested parties in your laboratory, in your institute or organization. So the next, focus on risks. Will risk treatment prevent repeating the same? That is connected to the question of the lady previous, related to their risks and defining non-conformities. In new standards, in most of them, they avoid prevent action, prevent procedures, because now it is not obligatory, it is not mandatory to have a procedure for prevention, corrective and preventive action. Now, we call now risk treatment, but actually it is prevention. It could stay also. It is not non-conformity due to keep this formulation. So, finally, what is final question for all of these items is, what did we learn from that? What is added value for our company and what is benefit for me? Okay. So on this topic, risk-based thinking, related to risk-based thinking, ISO 7025, we could, I planned to talk tomorrow, on tomorrow's session, maybe more detailed. Now I will talk most generally, most about techniques and other issues. And maybe to give you some homework by the end of this session today, and maybe we tomorrow could talk detailed about risk treatment, risk-based thinking related to 7025, 7020 standards that are related to that series 70,000. So first level, risk and opportunities are also set with all these area, and this standard all in new standards during the transposition transformation is very customer service oriented. Focus is always on your customer. Yes, and okay. Okay, certified that company has official written procedure and training documentation in the area of customer service, product design, manufacturing, Analyze the change management certification, packaging, shipping, and purchasing. Complaints are documented with corrective and preventive measures utilized to ensure continuous improvement. So second line, related to ISO 7025, certifies that quality-oriented tests, calibrations, and performed correctly. All aspects of quotation and contracts, the research and design, operation and manufacturing, and quality control activities are examined by this standard. The qualification, education, training of all associated are examined against their job responsibilities. So, practical issue risk assessment. ISO 7025 is applicable to laboratories to operate in multitude of business sectors, some of which include cosmetic, automotive, macroeconomics, nuclear, petrol, chemical, pharmaceutical, and power generation, etc., etc. One of the main requirements is impartiality, confidentiality, and independence, as well as professional competence, very important issues. So sometimes I put it example of some identified risks, actually, lack of personal and or lack of appropriate training, lack of effective communication mechanism internally and externally, because you have in all your standards demand to have properly communication on which way you communicate in your organization, on which way you communicate in your laboratory, horizontal and vertical. Lack of appropriate planning for production of service. You do not have correctly planned. Laboratory equipment is too old, also could be identified as risks. Laboratory is not well organized because you sometimes unit for handling unexpected technical problem with equipment, facilities, etc., etc. You could share with me your experience related to these all examples related to identifying these risks. So we will talk about it for tomorrow's session. Maybe today maybe we'll have time to pass through this today. But I planned that for tomorrow. It is many scenarios. I found a very, very useful example. Okay. Okay. Do you have some question now? Can we go on the next slide?
Yes, Alma.
Okay.
If you allow to me.
Yeah.
I just want to recall the question that one of our participants raised, that if the mitigation is not effective, and ask that most of the laboratories or companies, they are not considering the residuals risk. They are not measuring it in order to see whether the mitigation is effective or not. So residual risk, is it really required, and is it also measured to really make sure that our mitigation is effective or not? Can you comment on that?
Nothing is required here. You choose your methodology during risk management, also including residual risk. But if I understand well this, you should to recognize all your risk, including residual risk, and you should document it. Maybe you will not treat it, but you just know what is your risk, because on some way you need information about residual risk and monitor, and on some way control also residual risk. So related to this mitigation, it is very important how many actions you will undertake. What is maybe some it is cost so much for your laboratory if you undertake all activities. What do you need? What you think to could do. But recommendation is just to recognize and document it. Maybe you will not take some action, but you know what is it. You know that it exists residual risk, and you know what is your risk. Okay.
Does that mean that residual risk is an indications for us whether our mitigation is effective or not?
No. You could have effective mitigation risk, but you still stay with your residual risk. It is not. Sometimes maybe you could be, but not always. Not always. Maybe you could mitigate on a collective way, but you still have residual risk because you could not. You do not have influence on that risk, whatever you undertake. You know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just
So,
I have a question.
mhm.
Can I ask about risk management and threat management? Because many people confused about risk and threats. Usually, some people seeing risk and threats approximately the same. Some people say, consider the threats as from security perspective, always negative impact, and risk, as you know, sometimes a positive or negative impact. So what does mean the difference between risk management and threat management?
Okay, threat is only one part or one of the step of risk management. So now risk management are many activities during first of all identification, and you have risk analysis. During this analysis, you have prioritization. You know your threats, and vulnerability of your system is very important to know. Sometimes they forgot what is my vulnerability during the identification risk. That is not the same. That is only one part during the identification risk. That is not risk management. Risk management is much more, including your opportunities, including to recognize residual and other risks from external issues, external influence, some political, some environment, etc. But you should to document and recognize that. Also for security, information security management system define that on their way. Also, they trace it is a special checklists, for example, for that. And during this presentation, I will mention much more about threats. So about security threats and your question.
Just can I merge the two under one system, like risk and threat management under integrated management system?
Sorry, can you repeat your question? Integrated, what? Can you repeat? Yeah.
Okay. You introduced risk management and threat management. Can we merge it together and have it under like a risk and threat management? And this is under the umbrella of integrated management system.
Well, I did not call risk threat management. Actually, it is risk management. You know, what is threat management? It is not. I'm not so usual terminology. It is all risk management, including your threats. You have to integrate in all your system, in your all quality management standard what you have. Sometimes many people are not accredited or certified related to some standards, but they need to have risk management. This risk management is not only for one standard. This is for all your activities. Maybe you are don't want to be certified sometimes. Maybe you do not need accredited. You know what I want to say. But risk management is for all your activities, all your processes, all your companies. You have many companies you don't want to have, for example, certificate. But they need to have implement risk management system related to this guide. This guide is not prescribe what you have to do. No, it is just only guidance for you to choose which way is more applicable for you, what is the best practice for you. Okay, we get wrong first time when you identifying. It is okay. But next time during re-evaluation or monitoring, we will correct. We will find some non-conformities and we will correct all our activities. So I did not call that risk threat management. But if your practice, good practice for your staff is to put some formulation it is not on conformity, it is useful for you. But if you prepare and issue some procedure with these activities, you have to be in line with that, because on external audit that will be non-conformity. But standard not describe on which way and which methodology you will use. Risk management is much more than risk treat management. But it is very important to recognize treatments for your activities. It is much more important, because that is the first question. What go wrong? What is a treat for my operation, for my processes? And connect to treat is your vulnerability of your system. It is together, vulnerability and treat. I will explain detailed what is vulnerability and treat, what is differences, and why it is important later on. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. On this slide, I found it is risk committee. Maybe we could call risk team management, or what else, whatever you like. It is recommend. If you have some bigger organization, it depends of course, the nature of your activities in your laboratory, to have brainstorming, to have team for risk management. Because when you include much more people, it is easier to identify correctly risks. But always a danger is to go too wide, to prescribe too much about risks. Or you should be to go in line how to achieve my goal. If you go too wide during defining your risk in your laboratory, too much, for example, then go back to your goals. What is my goals? Short-term goals, for example, you have on a yearly during management review. You monitor your goals. What is my goals and what go wrong to not achieve my goals? And of course, you have it. That need to be connect to strategy on whole your company, because you are not so separate entity on that way. Because your goals must connect long-term goals of the company and strategy of that your institute. Okay. So risk team, risk oversight committee. What is important? Identifying risk we mentioned. Assess risk. So potential impact on your activities and probability or likelihood. Probability use word for counting, for example, in English language, likelihood for some events, but for example, in Bosnian it is the same word. So plan response strategy. I think that is important for all your laboratories. Plan response after you identify risk, after you assess, you have to prepare your plan to response strategy. So what you will do? Accept your risk, share risk, mitigate, or which way mitigate, or avoid your risk. I think maybe 80 or 90% plan response strategy, high level management, high level structure of management must be involved, because do not take so much responsibility as in your laboratory, as your staff or head of laboratory in some activities. I think that must be informed top management on highest level, owner, etc., other stakeholders involved in your organization. So then you have to implement mitigation strategy related to your plan and risk owner. It is very important to know who is risk. You have to define, after all, that is very important, because you will have confusion after all these steps. You could take the best solution methodology, for example, using a 31010, for example, guide, except use the best methodology. But now, after all, reassessment, monitoring, you could be confused, because you did not take plan and authorities described correctly, and you don't know who is risk owner and what is the responsibility of risk owner. It is very important to greet all members, all participants in that team, especially related to staff in a laboratory. Who is risk owner and who is responsible if something happened? Also, somebody mentioned risk management also, it is not only a negative effect, it could be also positive effect, and it also could be opportunity. But who will decide? Will we take opportunity or not, or will we undertake some activities under the risk, or how much budget and other assets we include to solve some recognized risks? Also, it is decision on a high-level structure, your manager, the general director, etc. You know, they decide sometimes to accept that risk, and I don't want to undertake anything. You know, sometimes they do not have. What could be problem? Sometimes they do not have enough information and enough correctly information from a lowest level management, because sometimes from some reason some of the staff don't want to inform about all risks, maybe for some their reason scared, or what happened, they lost the job or something. So you have to be very careful during this identification and informing top management about that risks. It is very important there to know information correctly, and it's decision of management what to do. To actually, you could suggest what to do, but the budget money also is on a decision of your director or general manager. So after that, you have, I would like to mention also monitor performance. How do you do that? How you usually monitor your all performance and your processes during other standards, implemented ISO standards? What's usual? What do you do? How do you monitor performance in your laboratory? On which way? That is actually measure your activities. How do you measure? Self-assessment, first of all, you have self-assessment, and you have internal audit. You could prescribe in your procedure at least one year, but it is not so necessary to be during 1 year. It depends of your activities, of course, the nature of your activities. It could be most fluently, maybe a couple times, but at least 1 a year. And also I would like to add here external audit from accreditation body, certification houses, etc., and other experts. Okay, do you have some questions related to this slide? Okay, let's go. Enterprise model you could see in, okay?
Alma, can I just, raise the questions regarding sharing the risk or transferring the risk? Is it acceptable, especially transferring the risk? Is it acceptable in the calibrations or testing laboratories? What do you think about that? Because transferring the risk is mean that you are you don't have any responsibility. You transfer all the risk maybe to the insurance company or whatever it is. So is it acceptable in this case, please?
Well, if third side agree, yes, it is, but it is not so usual. It is not so practice here. You know, you could not avoid all the risks. You know your responsibility, your authorities, and what is your job. You are nominated to do some in your laboratory, and you know you could not avoid all the risks and transfer all the risks, and nobody will accept that, third part especially. But if you could choose some contract to transfer some part to share that risk with the other part, it is recommended also. Insurance also is one of the way to responsibility from some other side, but you could not complete transmit or that risk on other parties. Sometimes what you have suppliers, for example, some goods, etc. It is also, you could mitigate risk between you and your supplier, etc. But it depends of your contract. Okay. During calibration, I think you could not avoid all the risks to transfer to somebody else.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we have some question here. What is enterprise risk model? I mentioned it is very important what culture you have in your laboratory, in your organization. I have here mentioned risk appetite. How much risk are we willing to take? That is a very good question. That is a question related to my comment not to go so wide during identification risk. Just you should know your capacity and how much risk are we willing to take. Before that is coverage. What are all the risks to our business strategy, and operations, and our goals, of course. Then, how good we are we at overseeing risk taking? It is also connected to our policies and governance. So, how do we ensure we have the right information to manage risk? It is also very important during your communication. It is also connected to risk data and infrastructure you have. Also, how do we determine the size and scope of the risks and report the result? It is very important issue. It is related to measurement, evaluation, and communication. Then we have control environment. How well do we manage the risk related to our control environment and response? What are we doing about the risks? What is our response? And the next one, next question is what else can we? What else can go wrong, and how are risks interconnected between all these processes? Because I mentioned before, some input from one process is output, output from one process is input in other process. So it is important to have the right culture. Right culture is the key in your organization. Risk-based thinking. You have to have actually commitment related to risk culture, risk management. Okay. And components of all of it are meant to be dynamic, reviewed back, put in any sequence. So, recognized RM or actual risk management standard offer a number of benefits to organization, all organization, if you use them correctly. But it is very important to know there is no single standard that covers entire field, and that organization, that many organizations are expected to use some components of such standard in order to meet their objectives. Also, I would like to mention again on this slide, taking into account the organization's strategy, goals, objectives, and establish risk culture in your organization. Okay. Also, this document actually provide one approach, actually a common approach to managing any type of risk in any specific area. Also, this document provides, actually can be used through the life of the organization, can be applied to any activity, including decision-making at all levels and all processes in your laboratory. Also, this guide, I would like to say, can be customized to any organization and its context. It is very important to define well-defined context in your organization, context in your laboratory, including all internal and external issues and influences. So what is the context of your laboratory? Could you tell me, somebody tell me, context of your organization in your laboratory? How could you define your context? What is context? What is your mission actually in your laboratory? Why do you exist? Why company is established? That is the very similar, very simple question when you establish context on your organization. But we will talk tomorrow more about context of your organization. So the next. So this guide 31000 is updated, and why? This is also recommend leadership involvement at all. That is new in this risk management guidelines. Leadership commitment actually related to all risk-based standards, including 70,000, 9,027, environment management system, and business resilience, also very actual standard in this period after all crises during previous period. During pandemic period, it is very important to implement and to know resilience standard, business resilience standards, and future is in the business continuity standard 2002-301. That is the future, and also is future in ISO standard 56000 standard. It is related to innovation. That is fine during COVID pandemic. That most important standard how you will survive during some kind of risk. This risk like pandemic is called black swan risk, and it is unpredictable, and sometimes you can do nothing, but you have to undertake some response during this crisis situation. Okay, so the application of this guide requires, some knowledge, some familiarity, and understanding, as well as practical experience and common sense. It is very important when you are taking count many risks during your identification and treatment your risk, to use your common sense. Only in that case your system be well implemented and will be useful for your laboratory, will be useful for you as employment and for company at all, for your institute. Okay, I mentioned it previous. Focus on leadership is very important. Top management is ensure the risk management is integrated into all organization activities. So not all actually, it is not only a staff job, not only a laboratory job, but it is commitment on top management who understand why they need implementation from ISO standard, and why it is very important to implement these guidelines using this definition many risks during in the organization using this guide. So it is also important to know knowledge and new experience analysis for the revision of process elements, actions, and controls of each stage of processes. So it is also important when you define your context to have feedback from external environment. It is also include related to your external context, especially during some changes in political system and some environment system, influence of environment system. After this slide, okay.
Yes, Alma, I just want to remind you about the break. 1 minute to go for the break.
Okay, 1 minute to go. Okay, we will stay on this slide about revised version of ISO 31000. What is the focus also? People who deal with risk are often on the margins of managing the organization. That could happen also. I do not allow that you will be one of that people. And this emphasis will help them show the risk management is an integral part of business. Okay, that is not obligation only on one part. The risk management is integral part of your business, all activities, all processes in your organization. We mentioned previous, it is very important to have continuous improvement, stakeholder involvement. Who is a stakeholder? It is interested party. In ISO standard, we call that interested parties. Then we have organizational adaptation and human and cultural factor also in your organization. So we will make some break, 15 minutes or 20. What would you like? What do you prefer?
Just thank you, Alma. Just 15 minutes is enough just to have a coffee or prepare your coffee and come. But
Okay.
before Alma, before that, please make sure that you put your contact details in the chatting. So for the purpose of certificate, and I would like to invite you to open your camera for group photo before you are leaving to the break. Could you please open your camera? Can you stop sharing, Alma?
Oh, okay, okay. Just a moment. Just a moment.
Yes, the episode. Can you just
Just a moment.
yeah, please open your camera.
Okay, I stopped sharing. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Yes, just give you sometimes so people might need to prepare themselves for group photo. While waiting for the others, please open your camera. Yes, are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Yes, episode, ready? Yeah. Okay, we finish, yes. Enjoy your break. Thank you. Yeah, I think that some people, they are starting to open their camera. Yes, again, Abu Saud. Can you wait just yeah, take, it's okay. Take pictures. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Still, I think that can we wait just for the others? Yeah, go ahead. Please open your camera. We will do a Photoshop. Don't worry. If you miss it, send a. Okay.
Absolutely.
I see Anas open his camera and
Anas and Co.
he's yeah. Where is Anas? Yes, here he is. Yeah, I grew a lot of people there. They are enjoying, the companies. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, done. Thank you very much. Enjoy your break. 15 minutes. Please. Yes, yeah, we are seeing a lot of faces right now. Our colleague in Yemen and Mr. Muhammad Al-Hashimi from Fanar, you are welcome. Yes, artist. Okay. Please keep your camera open so we can catch some pictures for you. But right now, enjoy your break. If you would like. You. Okay. Anas, how's things in Syria? Anas. Yeah. Yes. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy your break. We will put clock counters right now. Please Abu Saud.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Samia, she's not with us, Samia. And Amina, she is not with us.
We have Nora with us.
No, she is not with us. Yes.
Nora Shamsi.
Nora with us. Yeah. I'm not seeing her. From Fanar. Okay, we have Al Hashimi from Fanar. Our colleagues in Yemen. Mostly, you are welcome. Mr. Fahad, does it? Yes. And the others, yes. Let's go for coffee.
Yeah.
And enjoy your coffee. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Alma, you are back?
Yes, yes, I'm back. Hi.
Okay. Yeah. Hi. So
I took some coffee. Now it's better. Yeah.
okay.
Okay, we are waiting.
The break is
other.
over.
Yeah, it's okay.
I think the break is over, and I think they got enough time to, rest and enjoy the coffee.
Yes.
So you can start, the next session, please.
Okay, thank you. On this slide, you can see now homework. On this slide, Omar.
Can you enlarge the slide, please?
You could see this slide.
Yes.
Okay. This is homework for tomorrow.
Can you just make it wide? Enlarge it.
Just a moment.
F5. F5.
Is it now okay?
Yes, yeah. Okay.
Okay. This is homework for you for tomorrow. You could do it, and we will discuss tomorrow related to this. So I will read this your homework. What you actually need to do is to recognize at least 3 risks in your laboratory, in your organization. So the risk management process based on these guidelines encourage your organization and individuals to identify and assess different type of risks. So in this case, please identify at least 3 risks that your organization, your laboratory is currently facing or can be faced within the future and explain why. Okay, so you should to identify at least 3 risks in your laboratory. Then next step, risk analysis. It is essential that your organization complies with, I put it, with environment protection. It is very important now, laws and regulations, and at all times. Being the risk manager, you are assigned the task of analyzing the risks that may arise from failing to comply with health and environment protection and regulations. Is it okay? You should not be nominated as risk manager. Maybe you are just could be head of laboratory or quality manager, etc. But I put here just formulation, so don't be confused about it. You do not to be nominated as risk manager. Okay. So after risk analysis, you should on third step risk evaluation, and you have already carried out a risk identification and analysis in cooperation with the top management in your organization. Okay. And the next step is risk evaluation. And after all, elaborate how you would carry out this task. You have matrix here. This is a recommendation, but you could use your if you have already. In the first column, you have risk identification, possible level of risk. You have to identify level of your risk. And then what is on your color map in this matrix, yellow color is tolerable, then unacceptable, and the red color is intolerable. It is a high level of risk. Okay, do you have some question related to this homework for tomorrow? I will give you some example today to be easier for you. Okay, Omar will collect all this homework tomorrow. Is it okay?
Yes, Alma,
Okay.
how we can send this to the participant, if it's possible.
Okay.
I probably will. I probably will put it in the chatting if I could, so that people they can download it.
Or I could send later on this slide, or whatever you like. Okay.
I'm not.
Okay, you need to identify 3 risks, and after that, risk analyzing, communicate with your top management, risk evaluation, and after all of it elaborate how you would carry out of this identifying risk. You put three risks. Actually, you could for easier way, you could put also your goals. For example, 3 goals, short-term measurable goals in your laboratory, and then risk to not achieve that established goals. Also could be easier way, maybe for when you start to identify risk in your laboratory. Okay. I will give you one example to see matrix, how it looks like. When you identify risk, also one participants, I will show you this slide. One participant talked about threat and vulnerability, and I promised to explain that. It is explained on this slide. What is threat and what is vulnerability of your system and of your processes? It is very important when you start to identify your risks. Also, I mentioned before on last slide, common sense is very important during identification of your risks. Okay. So what is threat? Threat is person or thing likely to cause damage or danger. Also, danger posed by someone else. And threat can be identified but cannot be controlled. Vulnerability refers to being open to attack or damage. Flaw or weakness in us also could be vulnerability. And what is very important to know related to vulnerability can be identified and can be corrected. Okay. So I promised to show you one example for tomorrow's session, for homework. Okay, you probably saw already risk matrix, how it looks like. If you could, you can do the very common matrix, 3 multiply 3, okay, low, medium, and high level. Okay, likelihood and impact is very important to know. What is impact and likelihood on your actual probability to happen? I'm trying to find, okay, I'm trying to find the better chart for you, just a moment. It was on previous slide. I found very, very useful, it is chemical laboratory somewhere. And they defined many concrete activities related to this topic. Okay. You could see that. That is one adjustment. That is laboratory risk assessment based on ISO 17025 in one chemical laboratory. Okay. You have one of example risk register. This area is laboratory activities. So activities or process is sample collection. So quality concerns and what is risk here? You could see misidentification sample, then sample received in lab is not placed in control environment, inaccurate process parameters, temperature, pressure, weighing, etc., and expired reagents used in preparation. All staff of this laboratory recognize that as risks, and it is risks, and rating here. It is connect also to initial risk assessment, severity rating, likelihood or probability, and risk rating. Okay. So existing control in place. Sample received person from laboratory, verify name, identification criteria. So sample received in laboratory is entered in sample log and batch number, etc., code, and also they will return the sample to customer for proper identification. So the next, all samples are stored in designated location of a laboratory and environment condition of laboratory is recorded on daily basis. Okay. And laboratory is in charge also verified environment record. Okay. The next is weighing balance are calibrated and placed on flat surface. Furthermore, number pad under weighing balance to reduce vibration, and it is placed in designated position. Volume measurement is done through calibrated flask. chemicals are properly trained, the main staff, on testing activities. Reagents lists are available, used in testing activities, expire, or reagents are recorded in the list. Before using reagents, chemists verify is expire. So, okay, maybe more you need for the information. Just example, it's a concrete example, concrete laboratory. Okay, preparing, for example, test result. Laboratory person prepare test report without performing test on specimen. Preparing also test result, data entry mistake, ABCE preparing result. For example, final report is approved by technical manager after verification of test evidence and reviewed by chemists. Okay, you could see also the next one. I will not read all of it, just to show how to identify, some laboratory identify and categorize that their risk and what to undertake. What is actually
Alma,
corrective
there
action.
is a question.
Okay.
There is a question from Mr. Walid.
Mm-hmm.
He is raising his hand.
Mm-hmm. Okay, okay.
Yes, Mr. Walid.
Yes.
Feel free.
Just I'm asking about the previous slide about threat, because it was mentioned, it is mentioned that we cannot control it. But maybe I will give you just an example and how to control it. Like in the lab, maybe you have an event like a theft of tracer element like plutonium or uranium, and it might be used for malicious act. So in such a situation, and we can have a plan or a procedure to control this issue.
Okay.
Okay.
Could you put it as example for tomorrow presentation, if you like, of course, but
Because-
it is connect to your homework, because you
Ah.
are very familiar and detailed in that.
Because
Maybe it could be a good example for this. Yeah.
no,
Okay. Thank you.
in previous slide you have you mentioned we cannot control threat, but I think we can control it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I will show you this. Okay, you could put your experience, and maybe we could discuss tomorrow if you have some questions or some problems existing during already defining your during identification and analysis your risks. So this is one example how it looks like risk matrix. I will show you. It is important for your homework. So level of risk, you have to decide which level of risk, and we will discuss tomorrow on which way you communicate when you decide which level or risk is. Okay, here is probability or likelihood, very high, high, medium, low, or very low, but you could use only low, medium, and high, for example. It also depends of your activity, of course. And this is impact in this chart also. Definition, value 5, probability is very high. This is just example, at least once a day, but you could put what is your activity or what is usually. So 4 is high, at least once a week, 3 is medium, at least once in a month, and 2 is probability low, at least once in 6 months. So if you put value 1, it is very low, at least once in a year, or rarely occurs. Okay. And now connect to the impact. Value 1 is very low. In description, it means no impact or little on testing activities or the personnel performing the activity. If you put 2, impact low, due to change in work environment, which may create delays in testing activity, for example, and medium impact due to change in work environment or equipment, which may lead to ambitious testing result. So if you put high, impact due to personal grievances or pressure on the personnel performing the test, which may lead to compromised test result, or falsified report ultimately lead to high financial loss, and they put some amount, what is high for their laboratory. and very high impact due to illegal activity, bribery case, compromise, change in report for personal gains, etc., etc. Okay. So after your homework, we will discuss detailed, and I will give you some more explanation. What is very important also for serious ISO standard is impartiality, etc. Self-declaration of conflict could be one of activities undertake to minimize that risk. Sometimes you could not avoid risk, but you could minimize them. Okay. So where we stay here, okay, I will find the next. So it is a glossary. It is actually terminology. What is risk management? I will not read all of them, but you need to know that, or you need to have standards in front of you and just read if you don't know the definition, just to know what is using terminology in this area. So what is the risk? Risk is effect of uncertainty on objectives. It is a very simple definition, and you could use when you do this homework for tomorrow. Effect uncertainty on your objective. If you don't know to identifying your risk or not so sure, just you should know what is your objective and what is effect or some risk or uncertainty to not achieve your objective. Okay. And then you have other definitions. Okay, the next. What is risk management? Coordinated activities. Because somebody asked me, is this the same risk management, risk treatment, or what risk treatment management? What is risk management? Coordinated activities to direct and control an organization with regard to risk. It is definition. What is risk management framework? Set of components that provide the foundations and organizational arrangement for designing, monitoring, reviewing, implementing, and continually improving risk management through the organization. And that includes also policy, objectives, mandate, and commitment to manage risk. The organizational arrangement include resources, relationships, plans, of course, accountabilities, processes, and activities. The risk management framework is embedded with the organization overall strategic and operational policies and practices. So the next. What is risk
Alma,
management policy?
Can you please
Okay.
make the presentation mode?
Yeah, of course.
Sorry.
No, okay. What is risk management policy? Just you have all in standard of this definition, but it is my obligation, duty to inform you about it. Risk management policy is a statement of the overall intention and direction of an organization related to risk management. What is risk attitude? Organization's approach to assess and eventually pursue, retain, take, or turn away from risk. What is risk management plan? Scheme within the risk management framework specifying the approach, the management components, and the resources to be applied to the management of risk. Management components typically include what? What do you mean? Documented informations, instructions, procedures, good practice, assignments of responsibilities, very important part, all other parts, sequences, and timing of activities, very important because you have to measure effectiveness of all of it. The risk management plan can be applied to a particular product, process, and project in part or whole of the organization. Somebody asked me that. Okay. Management plan to be you could involve whole organization, product, process, project. Also, when you implement some ISO standard, quality management standard, your scope is also dependent on decision of top management. So you could only certify one part of or some processes, not whole. For example, maybe next step will cover all organization in the future, but not necessarily. That is your decision. Also, I would like to mention it depends also of nature of your activities laboratory. If nuclear laboratory, it is completely different, of course. So who is risk owner? We talked about earlier, person or entity with accountability and authority to manage risk. This is the question for you for homework for tomorrow. You will answer me tomorrow on this question. Who is in your laboratory person? Who is responsible to manage risk? Who is authority and accountability? Okay. Risk management process, systematic application of management policies, procedures, and practices to the activities of committee, communicating, consulting, establishing the context, identifying, evaluating, analyzing, treating, monitoring, and reviewing risk. Okay, communication is very important. Consulting, what is consulting here? Communicating with stakeholders. Of course, don't forget it. This is all interested parties. You have to consult with all interested parties. But finally, you will make decision. Actually, your head, your manager. But you must be consult with other interested parties and their goals and their interests in that process. Okay. So establish the context, defining the external and internal parameters to be taken into account when managing risk, and setting the scope of risk criteria for the risk management policy. This is familiar, I think, for you because of versions of ISO standard. If you have implemented 9001, you are familiar with all of this terminology. External context, what is it? External environment in which the organization seeks to achieve its objective. External context can include, it is cultural, political, legal, social, regulatory, financial, technological, economic, natural, and competitive environment. It is very important to recognize external context. I'm not sure if I put it in this presentation, but most important, very famous company Nokia just forget for external context, and what's happened, we know all of that. It doesn't exist anymore, yeah. Whether international, national, regional, or local environment also and influence on your goals and on your strategy. So key drivers and trends having impact to the objectives of the organization and the relationship very important, and perception and values of external stakeholders. You have to recognize your interested parties and your stakeholders. Maybe we could include that for tomorrow also, to just to think about it. Who is your related to your context and external and internal issues? Or what is internal interested party? What is internal context for your laboratory, and what could be external influences? Okay. The question will be, who are the interested parties for your job, for your laboratories? Internal context. Internal environment in which the organization seeks to achieve its objectives. That could include governance, of course, organizational structure. You have also flow chart in your laboratories and put organization structure there. Roles and accountabilities, authorities and roles, also responsibilities. Very important to put somewhere. Sometimes we put it in quality manual, but it is not so necessary, but it must be documented somewhere. As also, it is not requirement to have in right form procedure, risk management procedure, for example. It could be good practice. Of course, it is not non-conformity, but you have to be documented how treat, how recognize your risks, and it could be some document as risk register, etc. Okay, but you have to prove, you monitor, you recognize your risks. And somebody asked me related to non-conformities and risks, and if somebody comes to you as auditor, external auditor, and you did not recognize some risk, it could be non-conformity, but not always. It could be observation also, or non-conformity. It depends of event or influence of that risk on your processes. Okay, I forgot that to tell you previously. So, what also include internal context, your policies, your objectives, and the strategy that are in place, okay, to achieve them. Capability understood in terms of resources and knowledge. What is internal context? It is very important knowledge and competence of your staff. People are the most important. I think it is a very important source, and including also technology, systems, processes, etc. What is competent people? How you monitor, etc., etc. It is important. Then information system, information flow, decision-making processes is very important. How it is implemented in your laboratory. So relationship, perception of value, and internal stakeholders. It is also connected to organization culture. I also mentioned before. What is organization culture? You could see that when you come to some company immediately. Is it how they think how they organize people, etc. Standards, guidelines, and model adopted by the organization, and form and extent and contractual relationship to is internal context. So it is important point communication and consultation. So continual and iterative process that organization conduct to provide, share, or obtain information and to engage in dialogue with stakeholders. Interested party means regarding to the management of risk. The information can relate to the existence nature, from likelihood or probability, significance, evaluation, acceptability, and treatment of the management of risk. Consultation. What is consultation? Don't be confused about that. You will find that many times in 31010. Guide. Consultation is a two-way process of informed communication between organization and its stakeholders on an issue prior to making a decision or determining a direction on that issue. Consultation is a process which impacts on decisions through influence rather than power. It is important to know, and input to decision making, not joint decision making. I mentioned it. Who is stakeholders? Person or organization that can be affected by or perceive themselves to be affected by decision or activity. Decision maker can be stakeholder too. What is risk assessment? Risk assessment, risk identification, 3 steps: risk analysis and risk evaluation. Risk identification, process of finding, recognizing, and describing risks. Risk identification involves the identification of risk sources, events, their causes, their potential consequences. Okay, risk identification can involve historical data, theoretical analysis, informed and expert opinions to include, and stakeholders' needs. What is risk source? Element which alone or in combination has the intrinsic potential to give rise to risk. Risk source can be tangible or intangible also. What is event? Occurrence or change of particular set of circumstances. An event can be one or more occurrences and can have several causes. An event can consist of something not happening, and even can something be referred to as an incident or accident, sometimes called. An event without consequences can also be referred to as near miss incident, near hit, or close call. It depends of you. Finally, yeah. Consequences, outcome of event affecting objectives. What that is consequence? Outcome of event affecting your objectives. An event can lead to a range of consequences. Consequence can be certain or uncertain and can have positive or negative effect on your objectives. Consequences can be expressed qualitatively or quantitatively. I would like for you for tomorrow homework, maybe you have, if you like, that is your choice, to put one opportunity, 3 risks and 1 opportunity if you like. Just you could talk about that. Okay. Initial consequences can escalate through knock-on effect. Likelihood. What is likelihood? Chance of something happening. In this terminology, this word likelihood is used to refer to chance of something happening, whether defining, measured, or determined objectively or subjectively, sometimes qualitatively or quantitatively, and described using general terms or mathematically using this terminology as a probability or a frequency over given at some time period. The English terms likelihood does not have a direct equivalent in some languages, as in Bosnian language. Instead, the equivalent of the term probability is often used, and probability is often narrow interpreted, etc., etc. We talked about it previously. So, what is risk profile? Description of any set of risk. The set of risk can contain those that relate to the whole organization, one part organization, or other some part of your processes. Risk analysis process to comprehend the nature of risk and to determine the level of risk. It is important for you to know, to determine the level of risk. Okay, maybe sometimes it is subjective, so maybe you should involve more people when you determine the level of risk. Risk analysis provide the basis for risk evaluation decision about risk treatment. Risk analysis with risk estimation too. What is risk criteria? Terms and reference against which the significance of risk is evaluated, and risk criteria are based on organizational objective and external and internal context. It can be derived from standard laws, of course, other regulations, policies, and other requirements. Very important. The laws are on the first place, then standards and others. Okay, other requirements. Level of risk, magnitude of risk, combination risks expressed in terms of the combination of consequences and their likelihood. Okay, I will repeat it. What is level of risk, magnitude of risk, or combination of some risks expressed in terms of the combination of potential consequences or their likelihood. What is risk evaluation is a very important step process of comparing the result of risk analysis with risk criteria to determine whether the risk or its magnitude is acceptable or tolerable in some cases. Risk evaluation assists in the decision about risk treatment. What is risk treatment? Process to modify your recognized risk. Risk treatment can involve what? Avoiding the risk by deciding not to start or continue with activity that gives rise to the risk. Taking or increasing risk in order to pursue an opportunity. Removing the risk source, for example, changing the likelihood, changing the consequences, sharing the risk with another party or parties we talked about, including contracts I mentioned and risk financing, for example. Retaining the risk by informed decision. What is informed decision? You have to be documented it. And we call that informed decision, for example, and put on paper and documented also. Risk treatment to deal with the negative consequences are sometimes referred to a risk mitigation, risk elimination, risk prevention is the best solution, for example, and risk reduction if possible. Risk treatment can create new risks or modify existing risks. It is important to know. And it is very important to know that risk treatment, on which way you treat your risk, can create new risks. That is the reason why I recommend to use the common sense during risk treatment, because you can create many new risks and could be so much complicated identification for you. Okay, because finally you need to have benefit from all of this information. What is residual risk? Remaining after risk treatment. Residual risk can contain unidentified risk. Residual risk can also be known as retained risk sometimes. Relating to monitoring. What is monitoring and which way? Supervising, checking, continual, because it is not finished process. When you undertake these activities related to the risk management, it is not a finished job. Okay, I recognize my risk, I treat my risk, but it is not a finished process. It is continual checking your risks. Then supervising, critically observing, determining the status in order to identify change from the performance level required or expected. So monitoring can be applied, a risk management framework, risk management process, risk or control. Tell me one way or how can you have intention to monitor them? You have already that, I suppose. On which way? we mentioned that self-assessment, internal audit, external audit, etc. But one of the ways is also management review. Management review not only prescribed on procedure could be 1 year. Every meeting with your managers, with your staffs, is actually could be documented as a part of management review. So, review activity undertaken to determine the suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the subject matter to achieve established object. Okay. You monitor this on management review. You monitor, you made an evaluation of your goals, of course, and you start to implement new goals for the next period, for example, and it is very important to point 29 point of this review. I will repeat, activity undertake to determine the suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness to the subject matter to achieve established objectives. So review can be applied to risk management, of course, mentioned framework before, risk management process, risk, or other involved controls. What is risk treatment? Process to modify risk. Risk treatment can involve what? Avoiding the risks by deciding not to start or continue with activity that gives rise to the risks. Sometimes it is necessary to take this kind of action. Then taking or increasing risk in order to pursue an opportunity. I mentioned that before, I think. Removing the risk source, likelihood, and cost. Okay. We mentioned that on previous slide. But it is very useful to repeat it. Sharing the risk with another party or parties is very useful if you could do that, including some contacts, insurance, etc. Okay. So you saw this cycle many times. Maybe just it is a little bit boring Deming cycle, but in this case, it is very important to implement this cycle. Plan, do, check, act, risk management. Why? Plan, risk identification, assessment of your risk. Do, implement control, check, collect monitoring data, audits, etc. And after that monitoring, analyze and adjust for another step and go in cycle again. Also, this is also a very useful chart for you to understand what it actually is risk management. First step, identifying step-by-step assessment of your organization, individual areas of risk. What will you do with each individual risks? You could avoid, we mentioned it, eliminate the risk factor. For example, what could be that? For example, do not provide some services, for example, yeah, okay, except can you afford to cover the cost? Then transfer, move the risk to someone else. Contract, ensure your policy cover, for example, potential costs or agreement. Some said customer provides insurance, of course. And we have final, after transfer, reduce. Take steps to reduce the cost of loss, technology training, loss control programs, etc., etc. So we have many types of risks. I choose some of them. Operational risk is very important for you, and you deal with it on daily basis with operational risks, and it is also directly connect for your activities daily basis on your laboratories. So you have also a financial, strategic, people, human resource, of course, risk. Higher risks is also important. People are also important. Risk include all aspects relating to management and staff, including regulations, laws, recruitment, training also. Industrial relations is very important. Then we have technology also important. Technology risks include systems, cybercrime. Also, it is very important to know, and it's covered information security management system. But if you not implement also that 27001 standard, you have to think about this and define also these risks in your organizations. And technology is the effects to the industry, including new product innovation. Very important for many companies, for example, small, medium enterprises, especially here, is reputational risks. And reputational risks are the risks relating to the damage of your brand and standing, and you should be care about it, especially during implementation MS, Environment Management Standard. Also, it is very important to implement them, especially because of damage from outside and reputation. So on this slide, you could see operational risks bring together the other risks, of course, and the impact of your performance of your activity in laboratories, and includes also market condition. You have to be involved in market condition and your environment. It is external issues. Interested parties connect to external issues. External context is very important, of course, internal, of course, but don't forget external conditions. Environment risks are the risk also means on physical world, including some physical acts, including weather, and we saw pandemic also is one of them. Then financial risk, also very important, include financial performance, financial controls, cash flow, etc. Debt, of course. Crime too. Risk include aspects relating to management and staff, including also crime related to losses, sabotage, etc. We also mentioned cybercrime to include also in crime option. And strategic risks are the risks that business will fail to execute its plan or fail to adapt to a changing world. Yeah. So risk and opportunity management process look like this. First step is plan. Plan your strategy, plan your processes, organizations, including tool, business rhythm, and training. Very important to have competent staff and training. Identify risks is very important, and opportunities too. So for tomorrow, you could define one opportunity. For example, during identification, it is many ways how to which methodology you will use during identifying. You could use checklists. Most of us like checklists. And interviews also, analytical other techniques, some specification technicals, etc. And now, of course, brainstorming, teamwork, etc. Then, third step is assess probability, likelihood, and impact assessment, qualitative, quantitative, and make prioritization, categorize and prioritize your risk. Then handle risk, avoid, transfer, control, accept. We mentioned that before. What would you like to do with your risk? What would you like to do with your opportunity? Enhance, share, exploit, or ignore. Sometimes we ignore many opportunities, yeah. And after that, monitor and report after all 5 steps. Communicate about your monitoring, report your director, general manager. It is very important to have correct information related to monitor your risks, and after that decide what to do next. Do you have some questions? Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we are hearing you.
Okay. I just checked my technical issues. Sorry. Okay. I would like to for tomorrow's session, I would like just to repeat some and detailed explain some terminology and definitions. And what is risk assessment is determination of quantitative or qualitative estimate of risk related to well-defined situation and recognized threat, also called hazard. It we called a hazard sometimes. Quantitative risk assessment requires calculation of some components, magnitude of potential loss, probability that loss will occur in some situation. I put here some methods, not all, because we have a lot of risk assessment methods. So what if analysis is very usual, very common to identify risks and hazards. Of course, what if question is what could go wrong? I mentioned it before when focus is on risks. Okay, the first question is what can go wrong, what could go wrong, yeah? And about what would happen if things do go wrong. Very, very similar formulation, very common question you can use when you define your risk, want to define. This type of analysis is brainstorming activity and is carried out by people who have knowledge about this area, of course, some experts in that area, operations and processes that may be exposed to some threats and hazard events and conditions. Very important to know. Okay, that was what if analysis. So we like most of checklists. I think you could not see how it looks like. I put in some security risk assessment checklist related to information security management system and organizational risk assessment checklist, but we could discuss more for tomorrow if I find some maybe more suitable for you risk checklist. But I think you could use checklist from your standards 2025. Also, it can use step by step. It could be also your checklist. So this is the second method, assessment method risks. It is use a hazard and operability study to find your to identify your risk. It is qualitative method and it aims to stimulate the imagination of participants to identify potential threat and operability problems. And it requires strong leadership and it is costly sometimes and so on. Okay. It looks like in this chart, this is one example, risk assessment method. Using this method, parameter more and less. So very famous is also FMAA method. Is use failure mode and effect analysis for the first established this method in auto industry, and that looks at each element within the system. It then tries to predict what would happen to the system and as a whole when each element fails. It is using usually in some industry in process of production. This failure mode and effect analysis is common use, and I put it some information. It's good to know when we have when happens some disaster. Risk assessment method was created during 1971 and between 1976, when some people lost their lives during some Ford Motor Company decided to introduce some new model of aims and air crash tests, and a Ford engineer determined that the design, the fuel tank had flaws, etc., and then that is using after that FMEA form looks like that. It is useful form and many company using that model. You have process potential failure mode, potential for effect, potential causes, current control, action recommended after that, respond, who is responsible for making sure that actions are completed. A very good questions are here. What is the process step of feature under investigation? In what ways could the step or feature go wrong? What is the impact on the customer in this failure is not prevented or corrected? Very good question. What causes the step or feature to go wrong? How could it occur? What controls exist that either prevent or detect the failure? What are the recommended actions for reducing the occurrence of the cause of improving detection? Who is responsible for making sure the actions are completed? What actions were completed and when, with respect to the RPI? Okay. So we know all of us for risk register. Risk register is not a process that should be conducted by one person. Maybe you should know that that should be involved more person, not only one. Every person will have different ideas, of course, about what risks are most prevalent, so that will also allow you to discover risk that you may not have previously considered. That is useful, and gain new perspective and how frequent and severe a risk really is. Okay, so I recommend to have risk register as documented information in your laboratories. And how it looks like. one of the example. I find this risk register. You can see everything here that you need. Risk title, risk description and impact, identified date, when happened, risk categorize. Okay, risk, even here we have risk subcategorization. What is status? It is very useful also column. Who is owner? Who is owner of risk? Sometimes I mentioned process owner is not always risk owner. So risk rating, possible mitigation, and date closed. Very useful also information. What do you expect when that will be finished? Similar like non-conformity if you have sometimes, and you undertake some corrective action. Of course, you have date open and date closed, and who is responsible. Okay, and then we have risk matrix, consequences, likelihood. We talked about earlier. We are using. It is usually a heating map like this. Extreme is red color. If you have some in red color, you should undertake immediately some activities. Not wait, and not date closed. Just immediately, because it is essential to your activities. Okay. And sometimes if you have some medium risks, sometimes it could be high or low. You could be sometimes to be medium if it is very frequently during some previous period. Repeat all the time. If you have one activity, repeat all the time. Something is wrong. Okay. Okay, we identify potential risks. When you identifying potential risks, it is like prevention. We are using terminology prevention. Previous now is risk management, risk treating. It's 0.6, I think, in quality management standards. In 7025 is 8. What can possibly go wrong? 4 main risks categorized. I put here hazard risk, threats such as fire, or injuries, hurricane, flooding, COVID-19. I hope we are finished with that, with COVID. Operational risks, personal turnover, supplier shutdown, or power failure. It is very important during defining your context, external context. For example, if you have some supplier shutdown, what consequences on you, you have to recognize that on time and be dynamic. Financial risk, such as economic recession, fuel price fluctuation, we have it now, at this moment, financial risks. And strategic risk, which include new competitors and brand reputation. I mentioned Nokia for one example. It is important to remember that the risk environment is always changing, so this step should be revisited regularly. So, what you should to know during identifying your potential risks? Examine past losses. Don't ignore that information, and you can look at your company history. It is very important. If you have some new manager, some new stakeholders, etc., don't forget your history and all previous information you have. It is very important to be well informed all the time. Previous time. Consult industry association also is very important for risk information and for your business. Seek employee feedback. How many of you using this principle, using this point? Seek employee feedback. Sometimes it is just formally, but it is in your laboratory very important to identifying potential risks. Employee feedback is very important. So interview your staff. Analyze customer complaints. In many companies, when you have management review or audits, many of them talk, no, we do not have complaints, any complaints. Sometimes, I don't know, is it okay? Because sometimes maybe it is just formal. It is very good if you have some and collect customer and complaints and observation also and satisfaction. You have to document it because it is your quality life of your laboratory, just not on the paper, just not put on the paper and formality. You do not have added value for your organization on that way. Then follow your industry trade press and pay attention to losses and legal precedents experienced by others in the same business, of course. It is one of the good way. And use web-based services or software designed for this purpose. Of course, you have many softwares on the market for risk management. So you could use it, of course, if you have, also depends of your activities, how many activities, many people you have in your laboratory and in your organization. So measure risks, measure frequency and severity. What is the probability or likelihood of risk occurring, and if it did, what would be the impact? It is very important you to know answer on this question. So I mentioned you are using, most of organizations use heat map and matrix to measure risks on this scale. Risk map is a visual tool that details which risk and frequent and which are severe. And that will help you to identify which are very unlikely or would have low impact, for example, and which are very likely and would have, low impact. That means sometimes you should not even consider that kind of risk. Sometimes, okay. So how it looks like, if you have this chart, this matrix, low, medium, moderate, and significant impact. What is important to say here is significant impact. Must manage and monitor risk. Then in red color, you have immediately response. Then one of example of risk response metrics is here. When involvement of manager and other is essential. When you should to inform external stakeholders sometimes, etc., etc. This is rare, unlikely, possible, likely, almost certain. Here is impact defined as insignificant, minor, moderate, major, extreme. Sometimes this insignificant could not put you in this matrix, but maybe document in some other way, in some other form. So what we learned from today, what is risk treatment? What is risk management? And on this step during risk treatment is your choice, opportunity to avoid, reduce, transfer, or accept your risk. So during this process, you should examine alternative solution. What are the potential way to treat the risk of these, of the other? Accept, avoid, control, transfer risk. Accepting the risk means deciding that some risks are inherent in doing business and that the benefit of an activity outweighs the potential risks. And avoid risk. Organization simply has not participate in that activity, and now they don't have opportunity in this way. This control involves prevention, of course. Risk transfer involves giving responsibility for any negative outcomes to another party. Okay, and we mentioned that before purchasing some insurance. Implementation. Find the needed resources, and senior management will likely have to approve the plan. And team members will have to be informed and trained if necessary. It is a very important step. And also after that, you have to decide which solution to use and implement. Monitor result is also important. We mentioned it many times. And what is also important in the future is to develop a risk culture in your laboratory, in your environment. Okay. So you have to understand your recognized risk, how the risk can impact your ability to continue your operations in a laboratory. Okay. Revisit and modifying. The key is to have a basic understanding of the processes and to move towards its implementation. This we do not have time to talk about it, but it is, I think it is important. Maybe tomorrow we will have time to mention this case, who is responsible when some disaster happened. Nobody is responsible. It is very interesting case. That is the reason why I put it in my presentation. from the real world, yeah. So we will talk about it tomorrow. So what is consequences after that? Potential cause of incident that may harm the object, targets, or your function in your processes. So on this chart, you have how to prepare, logging, monitor, detect, and respond on some find risks. Okay, treat, we mentioned what is vulnerability, very important, sometimes forget, many companies forget to talk about their vulnerability and treatment and what is consequences, and impact on their goals. We have many in literature, nature of risk divided in many options. I use this. I mentioned the previous operational risks. Also, we have technical risks, black swan event, and security risks. What are the technical risks for our company? It's financial, credit, medical also, scope of the work, innovation, project errors also, condition of existing equipment, very important for your laboratories, and technical specification also. Then climate conditions, construction site, etc., environment protection, etc. Operational risks, we also mentioned that before. Black swan event, coronavirus pandemic, and other. Security risks is very important, and it is very aggressive actions that include cyber security also and other activities. Very important for your organization is to implement risk assessment act. It's occupational health and safety standard and the risk assessment act. I would like to just to know if you have it. I think that is a law. It is regulations in your countries. So the employer is obliged to define risk assessment act in a writing form for each job in your organization, your laboratory, which will determine the manner of procedure of risk elimination, or the manner and means that protect employee from the risks that exist in their workplace. In case there are risks from which the employer or staff cannot protect the employees, they must know what those risks are, what impact they have on their health. Employees need to know what benefit they are entitled to for job with risks that cannot be eliminated. So, of course, staff and all employees in that case must take part in the process of drafting Risk Assessment Act. I strongly recommend every organization, laboratory to have this act, Risk Assessment Act. What are conclusion for this management now? I would like to mention again, this standard is only guidance, and it is not intended to be certified companies and your organization. It does not contain any requirements. They must be applied to the establishment of a risk management system. And not taking advantage of business opportunities is also risk. I would like to mention it again, according to this ISO guide. And that should be also identified. What do you expect from implementation any standards, any ISO standards? It is a critical question, of course, and you have to answer of it. Actually, your top management leadership should answer correctly on this answer, and it is a strategic, actually, question. It is a strategic decision of the leadership of your organization. Very important to know before starting each project, a clear idea must be defined about why we do it and what we want to achieve, and what is that can threaten the realization of the same. Of course, I would like to mention, without defined goal, every goal is good, and without defining what is that can threaten that achievement of the same, of course. Okay, I don't know what is the time, and Oh, I would like to mention also this. Whatever you do during implementation of these standards, also risk management, never do it for the auditor or because the advisor or some consultant say to you or me, for example, but because of you or benefit to your organization. Okay, then you will be successful in the future. You related to the treating your risk and risk management in your organization. Okay. I don't know what is the time. Okay, we will
Time
continue
is 12.
tomorrow. Okay.
Thank you, Alma.
Thank you. Don't forget your homework for tomorrow.
Okay. Alma, can you please? I don't know how we can send them the homework.
I will send to you. Maybe you could forward to them, or maybe okay. Maybe you do not need just like this.
The whole.
I will open it. Okay. Maybe you should put. That will be free form. It could be also, but that must include risk identification. Okay, 3 risk identification, 1 opportunity. I added it. 1 opportunity, 3 risk identification in your laboratory processes, risk analysis, okay, include also environment protection laws and regulations. If you have it in your activities, I suppose most of them they have, okay, and analyze this with your top management. Okay, I think that will be enough. And we will elaborate. Sorry, we will elaborate all that findings tomorrow together. Okay.
Okay, I will try to either put it in the team, Microsoft Teams, if it's possible, and then they will, you know, download these presentations. Or send it to them. If you send me the these slides,
I will send. I'll send it to you slide, but they could use your free form. It is very important to document it. It is important to have this matrix, for example, risk identification, possible level of risk. Not strictly like this. I put it here, but okay. Okay, this is all. Do you have a more question about it?
Any question to Alma? Please. It looks there is no question, Alma.
Okay. Okay.
I would like to conclude today's sessions, with the big thanks to you, Alma, for this excellent presentations and information.
Thank you. Sorry, I forgot. Sorry for interruption. Omar, I will send you concrete 1 example in Word to you, and you could forward related to this homework to other participants, if you like. Okay, maybe a couple.
Yes.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah,
excellent. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for all of you.
So tomorrow we will again start our session at 9 o'clock. So enjoy your day today and looking forward to see you tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Very informative.
Thank you.
Please, if you forget to put your name in the chat, do it right now, please. Your details in the chat, emails, do it right now, please. Before you leave. Yes, Mr. Fad, you raise your hand. Oh.